What's up, guys, and welcome to the weekly Q&A. Just a heads up, there were a bunch of questions this week about Rogue One, understandably, so there will be spoilers for the movie. If you haven't seen it yet, you probably want to wait. Also, a real quick but huge thank you goes out to Jared Peardon, who donated a whopping $100 on Patreon. It just blew me away, so thank you so much, Jared. So, the first question goes to you. You asked if Vader took Jedi to Mustafar to be executed, which kind of connects the dots between Star Wars Rebels and Rogue One. Hera mentions in Star Wars Rebels that Mustafar is where Jedi go to die, and there's a line in Aftermath where Wedge talks about the same thing and actually straight up says that Vader took Jedi to Mustafar for torture, interrogation, and execution. So yes, you are right on the money. Adam Amaya asks why ObiWan doesn't recognize 3PO and R2 in A New Hope. My best guess is that both he and R2 were just playing dumb the whole time. 3PO had his memory wiped, so there's no problem there, but I think Obi-Wan wouldn't want to hint at his past too much. I think he was probably afraid that it would open up a whole can of worms if he were like, oh, hey, this used to be your dad's droid, and I knew it very well, and we both know all these secrets, and it would probably snowball into this thing where he's all of a sudden telling Luke who his real father was. So I think that they're just playing dumb, but it's also possible that living under two suns could just fry his brain, but I doubt it. Obviously, the real answer is that these movies were written decades apart, and they just hadn't thought about it when A New Hope first came out. But the best reasoning I can think of is that they were just both being coy with each other and like trying to not reveal any secrets or open up any dialogue that would lead to revealing secrets to Luke that Obi-Wan didn't want him to know. Kevin Adkins wants to know why some things can pass through shields and others can't. Well, the thing you need to know is that there are a lot of different types of shields, and I think that's where the confusion is coming from. There are deflector, magnetic, ray shields, like there are a bunch of different kinds, and they serve a bunch of different purposes. So magnetic shields, for example, are just meant to keep atmosphere in and keep the nothingness of space out, but ships can freely go in between them. Deflector shields are meant to stop energy, but like a droid could walk right through it. And then you have like planetary shields like we see in Rogue One where absolutely nothing can get through it. So it's just that there are different kinds and they're always just referred to as shields. So it causes some confusion, but really it's just about which kind of shield is in use at which point. The Razor Vids asks if I would like to see a cut of Rogue One before all the reshoots happened, and yes, absolutely I would. I'm very happy with how the film came out, but seeing the trailers and how many shots were not used and how different things appeared, like all of them running on the beach together, having the plans outside, I am very curious as to how that film originally played out at the end, the whole final act. I hope they're very candid with us when the Blu-ray comes out. I hope Gareth Edwards has a commentary on it. I hope he explains everything. I hope there are deleted scenes, and I hope they talk about why things were cut, why they were changed. Like, again, I am fine with the way the film is. I really, really enjoyed it, but knowing how many changes took place, it just opens up my curiosity, and I want to know how it played out. So I doubt they're going to give us like a separate cut of the movie, but I would just like them to tell us now that the film is out, like just be honest and tell us what happened and why so many reshoots happened and what changed, what didn't. It's just the film nerd in me wants to know so badly. Christopher Rosado wants to know if I think we'll ever see any other Rogue One characters pop up in Rebels now that we know that Saw is definitely going to be in. He also asks if the Battle of Scarif, if we'll ever see that from the point of view of the Ghost. And I'll start with that because I actually think that would be the perfect way to end the entire series. We see like a cell going from just 6 members to joining a larger rebellion, and it just gets bigger and bigger until they are finally there for the Rebels' first major victory. I think that would be the perfect way to end the series. As for returning characters, Yeah, I mean, really, any of them are possible. I think Director Krennic would be a really good choice, especially as we get closer to the Battle of Scarif in that time period. I also think, if not seeing K2 himself, I would be very surprised if we never saw any more droids of his type in Rebels. So, yeah, I think the options are pretty much open. Who knows? Maybe we would actually see like Cassian join the Rebels, and we could see him take K2 and reprogramming, and we'd get that whole storyline through Rebels. That could be cool. That's it for patron questions. If you're a patron and I didn't answer your question here, just go over to our weekly Q&A thread, and I left you a written response. If you're interested in learning more about Patreon, you can follow the link in the description. You get some fun little bonuses. It's only $1 a month, and the combined donations really go a long way in supporting the channel. On to the YouTube questions. CaloTube asks what I thought of Jyn and Cassian's deaths. Well, first of all, I'm just super pleased that they had the guts to kill every main character. I thought that was very cool of Disney. I think it was the right move to make. I mean, I'd been talking about wanting them to do that the entire year, so I'm just over the moon that they actually went through with something that dark. Jyn and Cassian's death, I think, was the best one. I think it was the most fitting and beautiful in a way. It was sad, but also like kind of wonderful the way that they got the plans out. They accepted their fate. They knew once the shield gate closed that they weren't getting off, but they did the things that they had to do. Cassian felt like he had atoned for the horrible things he apparently did for the rebellion, or even the things that we saw him do. So to me, they got the best death scene out of the bunch. I mentioned in my review that a lot of them, it just happened so fast and you didn't get a chance to process it, but they really took their time on Jyn and Cassian's, and it worked out very well. Stolp Scott 38 wants to know if I think Kylo Ren will visit Darth Vader's fortress in Episode 8. I think if anything from Rogue One is pointing towards the future, the sequel trilogy, either Episodes 8 or 9, it's that castle. I definitely think we're going to see it again. If not in the movies, comics, books, something. We're going to see that place again. And I think it would be totally awesome to see it 30 years later, especially as Kylo Ren goes and is exploring it, and he's visiting his heritage, basically, and learning about Darth Vader. Like, it would be cool to see that happening for the first time. So I think it would be really cool if they were to revisit that in the upcoming sequel trilogy. And it's worth noting that the concept art for, well, I mean, Vader's Fortress has been around, like the idea of it, since The Empire Strikes Back. They've been throwing around concept art for it, but they drew up new concept art that's very similar to what we saw in Rogue One for Episode 7. So they were considering visiting it in Episode 7. It is definitely possible that Vader's castle is going to play into the story somehow. Angster the Nerd asks if Chirrut was really using the Force to not get shot, or if he was just lucky. I touched on this a little bit this past week, but I read a tweet from a Lucasfilm employee that made me want to revisit it, because he put it more eloquently than I could. And he said that there's a difference between being able to wield the Force like the Jedi do, and allowing the Force to wield you. So that's what Chirrut was doing. He was allowing the Force to work through him. He was just trusting that the Force would protect him until he completed the task at hand, which was flipping that master switch. I just think that that's a really great and more simple way of looking at it than I've like rambled on and on about it, and we got to the same place, but that really boils it down to its base argument that Chirrut can't do things that the Jedi can. He can sense the Force, obviously. He can sense kyber crystals. He knows the way that the Force is moving, like around Cassian, but he doesn't have powers like telekinesis. I don't think he had the power to protect himself. He was just trusting that the Force would protect him. George Perez wants to know who that guy in the hood at Darth Vader's fortress was. His name, according to the visual guide, was Vinay. I assume that he is like a dark side disciple or admirer, kind of like the Emperor's advisors. And speaking of them, there was an advisor named Vani. I don't know if those names are just a coincidence or if they're meant to be the same person, but Pablo Hidalgo has hinted that Vinay, the new one from Rogue One, is a completely new character. So I just imagine that he is someone that believes in the power of the dark side but doesn't have any power over it, kind of like a dark side version of Chirrut or the Church of the Force. And the last question of the day is a little bit of behind-the-scenes info from the channel. McGuire Bentz just asks how I manage my time between this channel, a full-time job, and relaxing, and you specifically mention like watching TV and playing video games. I actually don't play that many video games anymore. I just haven't. That's something that has kind of fallen off because I don't have the time to, but really it just, I guess it comes down to, I found that batching tasks works very well. So like I will write all of my scripts for the week at one time, then I will record them all at one time, and then I do all the editing. So it's kind of like just, I don't do one video from start to finish. I kind of do one part of a bunch of videos at one time, and that seems to make things go a little faster. But yeah, it can be hard. But at the same time, this channel is something that I do consider it to be relaxing most of the time. Sometimes it can be very stressful, like after seeing Rogue One, and I was up till 4 a.m. doing my review video for it because it like had a deadline. It needed to come out the next morning. It didn't need to, but I wanted it to. So sometimes it can be stressful, but for the most part, like I come home, it's something that I look forward to working on. I love Star Wars, obviously, so it's not something that I dread working on. It is recreation in a sense. So when you ask how I split my time between working on the channel and relaxing, like they're kind of one and the same most of the time. But that's all the time for questions I have today. If you want to leave a question for next week's Q&A, just put it in the comments or go over to Patreon, and we have a weekly Q&A comment thread. You can leave it there. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. As always, thank you for watching, and may the Force be with you.